Okay, and welcome back to Talkin Knicks. I'm Tom Piccolo, recording this on a Sunday evening where the Knicks just lost 123 to 127 at home in their rematch versus the Memphis Grizzlies. It was a pretty heartbreaking loss, I'd say. I mean, or at least tough to watch. The Knicks had the lead with 26 seconds left, but couldn't get a stop to close it out. We'll talk about that. We'll touch on the other games. There's plenty to discuss, so let's do it. Let's talk Knicks. All right, joining me are my friends and co-hosts. They are brothers, Greg and Kenney Poon. We'll start with Greg. Greg, what's going on?
Not much. Good to be here. Just had a nice Thanksgiving with the fam. Did some axe throwing with Kenny. It's a new pastime that people do, I guess. So we tried our hand at it.
Is that a new Thanksgiving tradition for you guys? Is that going to be like a yearly thing?
Could be.
Axe throwing. How was it, Kenney? How'd you do?
I did pretty well. It's a little nerve-wracking the first time you get up there because it's like an actual axe and just like chucking it. But I think it went pretty well. It was a good time, nice situation. And might see that again from us during the Christmas holiday, I've been told. So look out for that. But all around good time. Have you done it, Tom?
I've never done it. So actually, what do you throw it at? Are you throwing it at lumber or what do you like targets? What are you throwing it at?
Yeah, so there's like slats of wood with a target basically spray painted on it, and that's what you're throwing it on. Throwing it
And
at.
are you actually like aiming or are you just pretty much throwing it as hard as you can?
Yeah, we're aiming. So we played two different games. One of them was just 10 throws, highest points win. The other one we were playing basically darts. What's it, cricket, Greg?
Yeah.
You had to hit each ring three times, and then there was a bullseye, and then there were two very small targets that we also made a part of the game. So that's how that went. Good time though. I enjoyed it. I'd recommend it for you, Tom.
Yeah,
You should
I'd
try
say
it.
you're definitely not throwing it as hard as you can. You really got to throw it to make it stick, but not as hard as you can.
Yeah, I'd be worried about that.
I mean, are there throws that don't stick and is that embarrassing?
There's a lot of throws that don't stick
Okay.
for me and for my sister-in-law at least. Less so for Kenny and my other brother Rob.
There were still a few for me too though that didn't stick. So it happens. So
You really
I wouldn't be embarrassed by it.
you really got to throw it.
Yeah, you got to chuck that thing.
All right. Well, I guess we've stalled long enough and we probably have to talk about.
Well, I was going to ask you how your Thanksgiving break was.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's nice of you. Consider it. Greg, I noticed you didn't ask. No, but
Yeah,
it was good. Went down to Delaware, saw my folks, met up with my brother and his family. He brought his wife, his two kids. So it was a full house. It was a bunch of kids. It was and a dog as well. So it was one of those holidays, and it was really nice. You know, do people like hearing about traffic on podcasts? The traffic was terrible.
Traffic was bad for me as well, and I just came back today. And I'll also say, you know nothing about a ton of kids if you're just dealing with three. Our house was popping with at least five of them, but there's no way to know for sure. And those things are crazy.
and we got it down to two yesterday, but one of them was just entertaining himself by screaming. They're not at anything about anything or just screaming.
Screaming into the void.
It's a favorite pastime.
Yeah, and I tend to do that when I'm watching the Knicks.
Okay.
Called a segue, folks.
Uh, okay. I guess let's actually start with talking about this Grizzlies game because it's fresh in our minds, and I think the people listening will probably want to hear that. So let's do that. Yeah, so the Knicks lost by 4 here. It was one that came down to crunch time, and Jalen Brunson had a couple opportunities at the end to tie the game. And yeah, it was. I don't know, guys. Go throughout this game. Did you guys feel like the Knicks were going to win this one? Like, did you have that feeling in your gut that the Knicks could pull this one out?
I felt like they could. I didn't know if they were gonna until they took the lead with 26 seconds left. I just said then I thought they were gonna win. and they
Yeah.
did.
And
I mean, the shot that Ja Morant hit to take the lead with 13 seconds left was more unfortunate than bad defense by the Knicks. They actually played great defense, got the stop, but the block just bounced directly back to him while RJ was stepping backwards, so he just got a free wide open layup, which was difficult.
yeah, and it's also tough because that was an absolutely terrible attempt by Ja Morant, who did a 360 surrounded by three people and got blocked. And then, fortunately for him, the ball just fell into his hands as RJ Barrett fell backwards, and he just had a wide open layup. So I mean, that's sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way, and that was one of those cases. But I'll say for most of this game, I like Greg was like, we could win this. I wasn't thinking that we were, even down to the last few seconds, because it seemed like the entire last, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes, no one made a single stop until the Knicks' last two possessions. So I very much felt that we had a chance at winning this, and then we didn't, which was, a real kick in the shins.
Yeah, the Knicks ended up shooting 10 of 30 from three in this one, so hitting a third of their threes. But I want to say they started were they 2 of 16 at one point? I mean, they were like couldn't hit anything from behind the arc. And at that point, I was thinking like it wasn't going to go their way. Like the shots just weren't falling. But then to your point, the Knicks really started hitting at the end there. Jalen Brunson in particular, he finished with 30 points, 9 assists to just 2 turnovers. RJ Barrett had a very efficient game. He actually had two of 3 of his games this week were efficient scoring wise. He finished with 22 points on 9 of 18 shooting, hit a couple threes as well, and he had 4 assists to 2 turnovers. So it was probably RJ's best game of the season. I'm sure we'll talk more about RJ later. But yeah, I mean, in general, just some notes I had on this one. Like it was Cam's return to the rotation. He sat out the last couple with an injury that he sustained in that Warriors game, and he looked really good. Like even though he didn't start this game, he did close it. He played nearly just as many minutes as Quentin Grimes did, and he hit some really clutch buckets. His some clutch shots in crunch time. He finished with 11 points on 4 of 6 shooting. What do you guys think of Cam's performance in his first game back?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think he had a tremendous return. He had some very nice finishes at the rim. He had a nice Euro step that I don't know who it was, but he left the defender defender jumped like it was a pump fake, but it was a Euro step, which is something that I haven't seen before. That was fun for me.
I think it was Brandon Clark who just got completely left in the dust.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing defending that, but it looked good for Cam. And then I think Cam, during their comeback, so I think you mentioned they were down by 12 at some point. During their comeback, he hit the go-ahead bucket for their first lead in, I don't know if they had the lead earlier on, but their first lead in a while, which was, a big time shot. So I was very pleased with Cam, and he also played some solid all-around defense from what I was seeing.
Yeah, I was a big Cam guy today. He looked smooth out there. Looked like he recovered well from his injury. So, I mean, he didn't really seem like he missed a step. It was good to have him back.
Yeah, great to have Cam back in the rotation. But, unfortunately, one guy returns and another guy leaves the rotation, at least. We don't know how long this will be for, but Emmanuel quickly just played 9 minutes in this one. He got injured when he went out to close out on Ja Morant. And he knew something was wrong and tried to intentionally foul Ja on a drive. The refs didn't call that and just let Ja kind of get to the basket. But quickly was deemed out for the rest of the game with a sore knee, I think is what Knicks PR tweeted out.
Yeah.
We have no idea what the severity level of that is. Hopefully it's nothing and we'll see quickly back, because he came out and was playing pretty good basketball. I mean, even in his 9 minutes, he had 6 points, made his 1 3. It was a nice pull-up 3. I think he had an and one in there as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah, a nice take for an and one. Couple assists, a few boards. So, quickly was quite impactful in his limited minutes. Who knows if we would have won if he would have stayed in. I think this was a game overall that the Knicks actually played pretty good basketball, though. I mean, certainly it was a much better played game than the one previous if we want to go backwards in time to the Portland Trailblazers game.
Trailblazers game was one of the worst experiences of my life.
It was. Any other notes on this one before we move on?
I just want to again shout out Jalen Brunson, and I think he was questionable leading up until maybe like 15 minutes before the game actually started. And he looked to start the game. He looked like he wasn't 100%. I think through 3 quarters he was 3 for 11 with 13 points. He finished 8 for 19 with 30 points. So by my math, he went 5 for 8 with 17 points in the fourth quarter. That's my guess based on what I remember. Don't quote me on it, but he really shot up in the fourth quarter. Unfortunately, 2 of his 3 misses were the two last Knicks possessions, which hurts because I would love to see, like, this guy was so big in the fourth quarter. He's been so big for the Knicks the entire year. I'd love to see one of these game winners drop for him in the Garden in particular would be incredible. But again, sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way.
Yeah, Brunson's going to be a recurring topic of conversation here because, I mean, he was the constant all week. Like, he was incredible.
I think he dropped 30 in each of the 3 games.
Yeah, 30 plus points in all 3. And in that Trailblazers game, he was the reason that we were even in it. It seemed like, especially at the end there. He was a stud all week. Like, it's hard to come up with new things to say about him because he's so, you always hear the announcers say things like he's so steady and he's so crafty and such a heady player. But I mean, it's just kind of true. He's not spectacular in the Ja Morant sense, but everything else he does, the footwork and just the sheer skill, we talk about it every week. And it was just even more evident this past week. Like, the dude can straight up ball. And I think he's making a real push for an All-Star game appearance. It may be a little early to talk about that, but I think he's on pace to actually represent New York at All-Star weekend.
Yeah, and we in our preseason pod, we said, I was a little surprised that we said he was their most likely All-Star, although given the number of All-Stars in the East, particularly at the guard position, I think we landed on, me and you, Tom, landed on no All-Stars. I don't know what you ended up saying, Greg. But he has been very much well worth every penny they paid him. And he is probably underpaid despite everyone this offseason saying that it was an overpay. Seeing what he's been able to do without being in the shadow of Luka Doncic is, he's by far been the next best and most consistent player. And, it's the first, I think we said this last week, but it's the first player in a long time that like is just really fun to watch because like we said, Randall and RJ are more bruisers than kind of like beautiful basketball, and the way Brunson plays is just fun to watch basketball.
Yeah, so I'll dig a little bit into this. Dig into this Trailblazers game before I pass it over to you, Greg. But the final score of this one was 132-129. It was an overtime loss. And Brunson is the reason why this went to overtime. He was incredible. He finished with, it was 32 points on 10 of 22 shooting. He had 4 assists, just 1 turnover and 5 boards. And that probably kind of belies how important he was to this team. He was 9-9 from the free throw line. And in crunch time, he was doing everything. He was the guy the offense was running through. And we needed every single bucket he made. Even though this ended up being a loss, there were plenty of reasons for it. Like the refs were atrocious. But the Knicks weren't much better in terms of how they were defending Jeremy Grant. He set a career high in points and in free throws attempted. He took as many free throws as the Knicks did as a team. That was a joke. Like, that should never have happened. But, Toppin and Randall were really bad at defending Jeremy Grant. There are a lot of highlights, a lot of clips of that. They did a truly, truly poor job of defending him. And then Simons had his season high in points as well. Greg, anything you want to add to this Trailblazers game? You said it was one of the worst things you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's a bad experience. The refs just called a foul pretty much every single play. I think the Knicks were in the penalty in the second quarter. I think they said Grant shot 12 free throws in the second quarter alone. I'm pretty sure the Blazers were in the penalty shooting free throws with about 7 minutes left, maybe more. And the Knicks never got to the penalty at all in that quarter, which was a humorous turn of circumstance. But that was just a brutal reffing performance. I'm not one to blame the refs for a win or a loss, but I'll blame them in this exact instance because the way I say it, the Knicks lost overtime. The Blazers were better in overtime. They just hit a couple more shots. They took like a 7 or 8 point lead. There was nothing the Knicks could do. They fought back, which was actually pretty impressive when they were losing by 8 in overtime. They made it kind of come down to the last couple of possessions by playing the foul game. But I'm pretty sure somewhere along the line in regulation there was 1 point that would 1 point worth of basketball rather than one instance in time that would have gone the Knicks' way. And if they had 1 more point, we would have won. I mean, the free throw differential here was 51-28, like you said. Grant shot 28, the Knicks shot 28. I mean, it kind of added up at the end. I think Grant shot 6 in the last 24 seconds while the Knicks were playing the free throw game. But even without those, he shot 22, which is just ridiculous. I mean, the refs were just calling ticky-tack fouls the entire game on the Knicks. I mean, they called a couple on the Blazers. There's definitely a few super soft calls on the Blazers, but a couple of them were and ones, which you only get 1 point for those, which, while helpful, not as helpful as 51 points or potential points.
Yeah, and I'll say like Greg said, like I will point out bad reffing. I typically won't blame a loss on the reffing, but this game, I think very much you could blame this loss on the reffing because it went into overtime, and the number, like the discrepancy in the free throws, but not even that, just the discrepancy in how the game was being called. The Blazers got so many soft foul calls and so many calls that like I'm not even sure if they were actually fouls. And like there are so many highlights of things that, or so many replays of just them like maybe they got grazed, maybe they didn't. It clearly didn't affect the shot, and it's a shot. It's a thing where there's so much incidental contact that is just let go in the NBA, and it was for the Knicks. It was let go when it happened to the Knicks. It wasn't let go when it happened to the Blazers. And like I just said 2 minutes ago, like Julius Randle and RJ Barrett are big bruising guys who just go in and try to draw contact. And so it's not like they were just playing like it's not like this is a jump shooting team and they're just like they were out there shooting a bunch of mid-range jumpers, and that's why. Although I think they shot 41 threes to the Blazers 32 because the Blazers went a zone defense for a little while. But at the same time, like there were times when Randle would drive in, there were times when Barrett would drive in with no calls. And like Greg said, every single possession, it seemed like the Blazers were getting a soft call. So like it's not the discrepancy. It's just the calls that got made were just so soft and like not worthy of being called fouls. And that's what the frustrating thing to me was. And that was, the story of the game for me. And, we could talk about how great Brunson was. We could talk about how Barrett struggled. But like for me, all of that goes away based on the fact that this went into overtime, despite the fact that the Trailblazers had such an advantage from, the way that this game was called.
Yeah, and we should note that this game was played without the Trailblazers leading scorer in Damian Lillard. He sat this one out. Anthony Simons, we haven't mentioned him too much. He was really good in this one. He was a matchup problem. He finished 13 of 25 from the field for 38 points. Like I said, a season high, 5 assists, and then he also had 5 assists to 1 turnover. The Knicks struggled defensively. They couldn't touch the Blazers without getting a foul call. But like I said, Toppin and Randle did a really bad job on Jeremy Grant. So like there's blame to go around, and the officials probably did make themselves the headline of this game. Another headline that wasn't so positive, to your point, Kenney, RJ Barrett really struggled. He finished 6 of 22 from the field. I mean, if you just look at the raw counting stats, he had 19 points, 10 boards, 5 assists. You're thinking 19, 10, and 5, that's actually pretty good. That doesn't do his game justice. He was super lethargic in this one. Like his defense, he looked like he was just just a step slow. I wasn't expecting that, especially after kind of the few day break that the team had for Thanksgiving. I think they played Monday and then Friday, so they had a few games in between, and this was the first game back after a pretty substantial road trip. And RJ just did not look locked in. He didn't look agile out there. He was just so slow laterally. So that was tough to watch. And he finished the game 1 of 7 from 3. And so I think that this game in particular, the Knicks fandom, at least the Knicks fandom I saw on Twitter, it kind of boiled over the lack of patience and just disappointment in RJ Barrett's season so far. I think I tweeted that like it was something like 86 players have averaged 12 field goal attempts per game, and RJ Barrett ranks dead last in effective field goal percentage so far this season. He has really struggled from the field, and he has not really made up for that on the defensive end. So it's been a frustrating season for him, but like I said, he had a nice bounce back game today, probably his best game of the season. I know we'll talk more about RJ, but
so he had the struggles on the road trip, and then he had the quick bounce back against the Thunder, where it seemed like he was back, and then he went back to his being horrible ways against the Blazers, which for me, that was the part of it that I was one of the people on Twitter saying, or in text messages saying that RJ Barrett is bad. And, he did a good job today, but at some point, doing a good job is the aberration rather than the bounce back in my eyes. Because, he had that whole road trip, he was just terrible until the Thunder game, and he was good. And so we thought he was going to keep being good. And then he was just horrible again against the Blazers, which was.
And
go ahead, Kenney.
I just want to throw one point in that surprised me that I saw from, I think it was Knicks Fans TV. Someone on Twitter tagged us, Ron, New York Ron 16, if you're listening. He tagged us in it. And it's just RJ stats from the first 19 games last season. And they were also very bad, which gives me a little bit of solace. Maybe it shouldn't, but through 19 games last year, the big number that jumped out to me is he was shooting 38.8% from the field, and this year was shooting 39.4% from the field. Like it's the whole list of stats, but like that was the one that jumped out to me that like he was bad to start last year too. So maybe give him a minute. And again, like I think some of this is dragged down by like for 3 or 4 games during that road trip, he just looked like he was not a living person on the court because of illness. But I think I am more willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and like see how the season plays out, while acknowledging that he has not looked good for many games. Although I think this last game was an aberration.
And one thing I'll say is that last season he shot 40.8% from the field total. So that's not, those 19 game shooting percentage isn't like super way off what he was. We were expecting a jump in efficiency, which hasn't happened.
That's fair.
Yeah, and even that game against OKC, which I don't even know how much we want to talk about, but he had 25 points on 10 of 16 shooting, which was encouraging. But he also had 6 turnovers, and a lot of those turnovers were of the pick 6 variety that were just terrible turnovers that he needs to cut out entirely. 6 is just way too many. He's doing a lot of the tunnel vision stuff where he's looking off teammates. His teammates are getting frustrated. There was actually some of that even today, I noticed, but thankfully it seemed like he came out today making a concerted effort to make the pass, and then he started kind of looking for his own a little. And I know he looked off Cam at the end of the first half. And Cam was wide open in the far side corner, and he was clearly upset that he didn't get the ball. But Hartenstein thankfully tipped in RJ Barrett's missed shot. It's just those things add up, right? Like teammates are going to get frustrated if RJ just refuses to pass on these drives, because he drives a lot. This dude drives the ball all the time. There's no reason that he should be averaging so few assists. Part of that is that even when he does kick it out, like the Knicks are 30th in 3-point percentage on the season. That's really bad. But that's not, I'm not going to bail out RJ for that. Like he's really struggled to find the right man, to find the open man. Kenney, I think that you clipped one from Talkin Knicks Twitter account where he had a post up and then he drove baseline and kicked it to Obi Toppin for a corner three. And that was really encouraging. I clipped that too, and I saw you posted it before I did. Like it was kind of a talk about an aberration. That's just not something we've seen a whole lot of, is just that kind of improvisation, and reading the defense, like you said, and finding the open guy there. So that was encouraging. And I'm hoping that this game, being his best one of the season, is going to start him trending in the right direction, and that this one's not the aberration.
Yeah, and I like very much that play stood out to me because it looked like he was reading the defense. He saw that he had an open man, and that, to your point that you were mentioning before, that was not the case for much of this game. It looked like much of this game is the same thing that we've been saying since probably last year, where it's like he predetermines what he's going to do, whether he's going to shoot it or pass it. And there were times this game where that happened, and so like you said, very happy to see that play where he, a guy came at him, cut him off, and he saw Obi open in the corner, and Obi, rewarded him by hitting the three, giving him the assist.
Yeah, man, and like a lot of RJ's assists go to Mitchell Robinson. You see the lobs, you see the dump offs underneath. Those are plays. Those are set plays. Like that's not, and give him credit for making the right decision. But it does feel sometimes he'll throw those same passes when it's not there. And it's like he is predetermining those. And that's kind of what we're worried about, is that kind of processing the game. You just want to see it a little bit sharper in year 4. And, we're not going to come on here and kill RJ Barrett after he just had his best game of the season so far. So two of the 3 games he scored efficiently this past week. And so that's kind of a upward trajectory that we're hoping to see continue. I guess the next topic I want to talk about was just some rotation stuff. So since Cam Reddish is back, we had Grimes start, but Cam kind of finished the game. What do you guys think of Grimes getting the start over Cam? And do you think that should be the case going forward?
It is a very tough call because Grimes, I think, is the guy that we started the season saying he was the guy that fit the most, and I think for the same reasons I lean towards Grimes being the starter over Cam, because Cam has a little bit more ability to create for himself. I think Grimes this year has shown a little more creativity in terms of like driving and dishing, but he's not a guy that's going to like ISO someone and get a bucket. So I think Cam can do that a little more off the bench, whereas Grimes can be a very good catch and shoot player with high usage guys like Brunson, Randall, and Barrett in the starting lineup. So I would stick with that because both of them, have been very good defenders, and Grimes' shot hasn't been falling yet, but I would expect that could change eventually, and I think that's a very much needed. Although who are we talking about? Reddish, sorry. Brain fart there. Reddish has also been shooting the ball well. So like I said, I don't think there's a bad decision, but I think just based off of Cam's ability to create and maybe more being able to do that off the bench without the other ball handlers on the floor, I think that's the way I would lean.
Yeah, I think I agree with pretty much everything he said. So once Grimes starts, his shot starts falling. I think that's the fit for the starting lineup with the high usage guys. So you have you're like your Danny Green type who could just stand in the corner and knock down shots. I mean, he does a very good job of cutting. He's always surprisingly quick and bouncy, and he makes a good cut, and he'll finish at the rim, which is nice. But I think Cam right now is better at creating his own shot. So in the long run, I think the second unit and letting him kind of really flourish there and get more looks as the number 1 option or number 2 option if RJ's playing with him and quickly. So yeah, I think that seems like the right thing. And Grimes is better on defense, but I mean Reddish does make defensive plays and he uses his athleticism to make things happen. But at the end of the game tonight, I mean, you could just see John Morant was just taking his pick and then sprinting past Cam Reddish. So that wasn't really working out. But I mean, who's to say? He pretty much just does that to everyone in the NBA. So I can't really be too upset about Cam Reddish getting sprinted past.
Yeah, Morant's a tough guard for Reddish, and I liked his length on him, but Grimes is just a better. He moves more quickly laterally, and he's a better kind of point of attack defender. But I mean, Reddish has been really good in passing lanes, making plays, getting steals, getting blocks. The thing about Grimes that has impressed me most, obviously he's been struggling from the 3-point line. He has been really good making plays for his teammates since he's come back. His first game back in the rotation, we mentioned, was that 8-assist game against Phoenix. Then he had just a 1-assist game against OKC, but he had 5 dimes against Portland and then 4 against Memphis in kind of limited, not limited minutes, but for like 26 minutes. He really does make great decisions with the ball in his hands, and he makes unselfish plays. Like some of his extra passes are just, they create wide open looks, wide open dunks. I think Mitch got a couple free dunks on looks that like Grimes could have probably gone up with it, and maybe some of his teammates might have gone up with it. Grimes dishes it off. Like I'm very impressed with his passing ability and his playmaking, which that helps bench units or it helps the starters. I like him in the starters too. I think it's where he belongs, and Cam and Tibbs can kind of gauge who's playing better, who should be finishing games, and maybe both of them should be in certain instances. But it's not a bad problem to have, like too many good wings. So
and we'll see if now that Cam, Grimes, and RJ are all healthy, if RJ may sit out sometimes down the stretch if he's not doing a good job. I know that's possible now that we have 2 effective wings that can play. So who knows? We'll see. But maybe he'll just continue to play 45 minutes a game regardless. I don't know.
I'm gonna throw out just a hot take here. I feel like if the Knicks were to go small at the end of the games, I would not mind seeing Cam as the small ball 4 over Obi in that situation with Randall at the center. What do you guys think of that? I'm just thinking about this out loud, and I feel like that would be a fun situation for me. With the defensive Grimes and Cam surrounded by the Knicks' 3 best players.
I'm all for it. I mean, I'd say the Knicks, especially in this game against, Steven Adams and the Grizzlies were just killing us on the boards. But in general, the Knicks have been one of the worst defensive rebounding teams in the league, which is crazy considering that they always have traditional bigs. Like they always play traditional centers and they always play proper power forwards. Always is an exaggeration there. Obviously, we see Randall and Obi minutes together in spurts, but for the most part, we're seeing 3 centers like in some games where you're getting Hartenstein, Sims, and Mitchell Robinson all in the same game. It is crazy to me that they've been as bad at defensive rebounding as they've been, and it's not like it's going to get a whole lot worse if you go small. Like we're already getting killed there. Might as well try and make up for it in other ways. So I like that idea. So next thing I guess we could talk. IQ's hurt. I did notice that Sims didn't play against the Grizzlies. Jericho Sims, I thought, has been the best center. Yeah. Oh, did my internet cut out? Sorry, guys. You go ahead.
Yep, I agree with you. Jericho Sims has been great in that Blazers game, especially where Mitchell Robinson made his return to the lineup, and Hartenstein was the first big off the bench. You were wondering if we were going to see Sims at all, but then Mitchell Robinson got in foul trouble, which was unfortunate. But it made sense because the refs called a foul every single play, like we said. And then Sims ended up playing the entirety of down the stretch. Plus, he started in overtime, even though Mitchell Robinson still hadn't fouled out at that point. And then eventually, after a couple minutes in overtime, Mitchell Robinson came back and fouled out, and Sims came back in and finished the game. But it spoke to volumes to how good he's been. That he was the one starting overtime when everybody else was available, and then they left him in down the stretch. He's been very good. He is very bouncy. He's always in the right spot. He had an and one to tie the game down the stretch in the fourth quarter, which is great. He hits his free throws when he gets there, which is nice. Added perk. I'm a big fan of the guy.
Yeah, and I'll say it seems just based off of the last couple games since Mitch got back that it might just be a matchup thing. Like against Portland, they needed a big defensive center to play while Nurkic was kind of cooking a little bit. Against today against the Grizzlies, Steven Adams isn't really so much of an offensive threat as he is just an offensive rebounder, and presumably a guy like Hartenstein would Hartenstein versus Sims isn't much of a difference. You don't really need Sims defense against Steven Adams, so I think that might just be a matchup thing night to night, because I think like you both said, Sims has earned some potential to play, and he's been very good when he has played.
Yeah, I think considering the coverage that the Knicks were running against Ja Morant pick and rolls, they weren't switching. But Greg, to your point, Ja is so fast that when he gets that screen, he's like full on sprinting into the paint. Like, he is so fast. So it essentially becomes a switch. Like, you're seeing guys like Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson try and contest these floaters and jump shots, but they're just not. Even Mitch. Mitch did a pretty good job today, I will say, but Hartenstein struggled. He doesn't have the length or the athleticism to do that. Jericho Sims does. Like, he would have been the best option to run that kind of drop defense against Ja Morant. Would have been interesting to see. So, I'm curious to see how that Tibbs kind of plays that center rotation going forward, because there are three guys who kind of deserve to play, and Hartenstein, for as much of a downgrade he is sort of as a rim protector, he's by far the most skilled passer. Like, he had some really nice passes. I think I want to say he hit Cam Reddish on a cut, and Cam then dumped it off to Obi for a dunk. And those are the kinds of plays that you just don't really see. You flat out won't see if Sims or Mitchell Robinson are playing center.
Yeah, and he's always looking to pass, which is good too. In the first quarter today when he got in, he was looking for a backdoor cut, but nobody backdoor cut, so he just threw it out of bounds. But it was a good idea.
Oh, that backdoor cut for Quickly was wide open, and actually the play before it was wide open again, and you could see Hartenstein wanted to make it that time too. He was like tempted to throw it out of bounds again, but Quickly didn't cut that time either. And then the next time down, he was like, well, surely Quickly will cut this time, and he didn't. So that was a backdoor play that was wide open, and it was a bummer that Hartenstein's got a great eye for that sort of thing. So that's kind of another good problem to have, where you have like three very competent NBA rotation centers. Obviously you're paying Mitchell Robinson $60 million, I think over 3 years. So or is it over 4 years? Do you guys remember what Mitch's contract is? He's getting some money.
I think it's 4, but I think we all agree that he's the guy. So it's really the other two who are figure out how to mix and match those two.
All right. Do we talk enough about Jalen Brunson? I feel like
I don't think we could ever talk enough about Jalen Brunson. The only problem is there's only so much we could say. He's been great, and he's been the Knicks' best player, and he is just an amazing sign this offseason by the front office.
Yeah. And another thing I'll say about the people saying it's an overpay. Even Clyde today was saying people are saying it was an overpay, but I don't hear them saying anything anymore. Which was funny, good to hear. But we'll see it coming up this week in our matchup against the Mavericks. But the Mavericks are in struggle city without him. You have Luka Doncic, who is potentially the best player in the NBA currently with how he's been playing, but they're still only 500, about to drop below 500 since they're losing to the Bucks right now. But the rest of that team is just not hooping, and losing Jalen Brunson has been a large part of that. And the Knicks own the Mavericks top 10 protected pick. So the value of paying Jalen Brunson, we kind of may have bought ourselves a little bit of a better pick,
Nice.
which is good. And also, I was reading yesterday that Reggie Bullock and Tim Hardaway are both very bad. So
They've been terrible. Yeah.
I mean, we all knew about Tim Hardaway, but it's a bummer about Bullock. We like him.
I liked Reggie Bullock, and it was crazy to me that like last year, I think people were pretty high on Tim Hardaway Jr. and I was just like, I watched this guy play in 2 different stints on the Knicks, and I just didn't see it.
Yeah,
So
he got himself re-signed for another 4 years, $70 million, which is impressive after what he did with his first 4 year, $70 million contract. He was just horrible for 3 years, and then you have your okay contract here, and they do it again, and then you go back to being Tim Hardaway Jr.
Well, guys, I was pretty tempted to kind of wrap it up and look to the week ahead, but I guess we should do one quick kind of temperature check on. We haven't even really talked about Julius Randle much, and he's one of our highest usage guys. He's been the second best player on the team, probably. Certainly the second best offensive player on the team, no question. What do you guys think about Julius Randle? Do you like him?
I think I'm higher on Julius Randle than most. I still think he is clearly the second best player by a lot. The one thing I don't like about him is when he just shoots jump shots. It seems like in the first quarter of every game for, I don't know, last like 3 weeks, he just comes out firing jump shots. Tonight he did it. The game I was at a couple weeks ago, he did it, and he just seems to do it. And it's just not his game. You take the jump shot when it's there, but that's not what you're looking for. That's not what you're trying to do when you're Julius Randle. You're just an absolute beast. And it's not like he's taking his patented turnaround fadeaway out of bounds type of mid-range jump shot. It's just settling for 3-pointers early in the shot clock, stuff like that. But I mean, against the Blazers, he was, like you said, the box plus minus, or the regular plus minus, didn't do him any favors. He was minus 17 in his 39 minutes, and Toppin was plus 14 in his 14 minutes. So that was a bit unfortunate. A lot of that was just the third quarter where the subs built up a big lead, and then the starters immediately lost the entire thing, and it was a 1-point game going into the fourth. So I like him.
yeah, I'm probably right about where Greg is. I think I'm much higher on him than Knicks Twitter would seem to be, and I think Knicks Twitter is just a little overboard in kind of how they have treated him. I think this year and in the last few games in particular, I think he's been playing much more within himself rather than trying to force everything, and I think a lot of that has to do with Jalen Brunson. On the defensive end, I know that is his biggest issue, and I think what Knicks fans just need to accept is that's the player that he is. Like I don't think that. Like I think there's times when he loses sight of things because he's ball watching, but like I don't think that's a lack of effort or anything. But again, I think offensively, I'm much more happy to see him playing within himself than forcing stuff like he did last year. There was a play during the game today against Memphis where RJ did his tunnel vision thing. I think Randall was pretty wide open, didn't get the ball. And so I think that's a situation where historically, if the ball came back to it, let me finish explaining what happened in the play. So that happened. RJ forced a shot. The Knicks got the offensive rebound, and it got kicked out to Randall. I think in that situation, after just getting passed up for what could have been an open three, after RJ drove, he would have just drove at the rim and tried to force something to happen. He did drive, but then RJ was left wide open, and he kicked it out to RJ, and RJ missed the wide open three. But that play was very indicative to me of like he's playing the team basketball game because, again, historically, he was wide open for a potential shot, was ignored. The ball came back to him. He would have gone right at the rim and tried to draw a foul or something. But in this instance, he made the right play and found the open shooter, if you can call RJ a shooter.
No, Kenny, I noticed that too, and that was undoubtedly a good sign for him. And I'm with you guys on the offensive end. And Kenny, I know you just mentioned the defensive struggles. I'll probably take it a step further in a second, but just touching on his offensive game today, he had a season high 9 assists to just 1 turnover today. So even though he only took 9 field goal attempts, 5 of which were threes, Greg, to your point, that's not the kind of disparity you want to see. But like at least the shot selection you want to see. But the 9 assists to 1 turnover, that's as good as you're going to get. Like his second highest assist output this season is just 7 assists. He had 4 turnovers in that game. 9 to 1, he does not have a better assist to turnover ratio, maybe even in his career. Honestly, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Defensively, I don't think. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say he's the worst defensive player on the team. Like I just sent you guys in the chat like a play in overtime against the Grizzlies, which I call, or the Grizzlies against the Blazers. And I deem this like the most important play in overtime. It was with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left in overtime. It was a 1 possession game, and Randall just completely zones out. I mean, he's ball watching, and Kenny, I know you kind of said like that's just kind of who he is as a player, but this is the most high leverage moment of the game to that point, and he just he should be guarding Nurkic, completely loses track of him, and ends up being an easy bucket for him. And it's like those types of plays just in big moments can be really frustrating. Even more frustrating are when he like doesn't run back on defense. The transition defense with him on the floor, him and RJ together is just a train wreck. I think he's just a very damaging defensive player, but he's been very good on offense. So you kind of have to take the good with the bad there. And we haven't really talked that much about Obi. He's been really bad. Like he's I'm looking at the last 8 games. He's averaging 5.5 points per game, shooting 35% from the field. This is 8 game sample, down to 31% from 3. If he's not hitting threes, Obi's like kind of not contributing to our offense, and he's definitely not helping on defense. He's been very bad there too. So like, usually when Randall's kind of loafing on defense, fans will look at Obi Toppin and be like, you got to get this guy in. Look at what he's doing when he's on the floor. Lately, that hasn't been the case. He hasn't been finishing around the rim very well if he's not dunking it. So it's been kind of a weird regression from Obi. We haven't really seen a stretch from him like this where he's struggled so much on the floor. I mean, what do you guys think of what you've seen from Obi? And then we'll kind of wrap it up.
I just want to jump in and say, first off, I appreciate your kind of level-headedness on that, because I think a lot of people, like you said, take the position that Obi is the answer and Randall is the problem. And like watching the games, like you said, Obi's been struggling. And today, I think I mentioned to you guys, like Obi took some of the worst threes that I've seen him take. I don't know if it's a corner 3 problem with him, but I have seen him airball a lot of corner 3s this year, and today was like one of the worst I've seen. I feel like it was both long and to the left, like it wasn't going to hit the rim in either direction.
I think we need to get him LASIK surgery or something, like some kind of like, or contacts. Something's got to happen there.
Yeah, that was a thing that happened to Rudy Gay. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Right.
But he, like, very late in his career, was just like, oh, he got LASIK, so now he can see. I was like, why would you wait this long to do that? But maybe I don't know. And I think, like you said, I think the 3-point shot for Obi is coming back to earth. And I would love it if he was a good shooter. And now I'm kind of a little less sure than I was maybe a week ago about his long-term prospects, or maybe if he had a hot streak. Although like I'm not completely out of him as a shooter. But like you said, the defense has also been a problem. I don't know. I feel like I'm going too negative with this, but Obi's game has not been what the Knicks have expected. Although I think it's to some people's point, it's not for lack of effort. I think he is. Whenever he's on the floor, he's putting effort in. So there, I'm going to end it on a positive and stop talking.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, the one thing Tom mentioned that I have noticed is this is finishing at the rim. Then when it's not a dunk, it is quite frustrating. Today there was a layup that he missed and then he came back and dunked it the next play, and Clyde and Breen were saying, should have just dunked the last one. So I don't know. I don't know what it is. It just seems like he's very inconsistent. I like him. I don't. I've always more been a Team Randall over Team Obi guy, just because one of them is better than the other. But
Yeah,
like
and I'll
them
just
both.
say, like, Obi's defenders would say, look, he's not getting into rhythm. He's not playing enough. The role he's in, he's just being asked to stand in the corner and shoot, and that's not what he's good at. Like, he should be more involved in the offense. Like, and I get these things too. Like, there's two sides to it, but yeah, considering what he's being asked to do, he's not doing a good job of it right now. And he's not rebounding well either. To go along with his defense. So like that's a problem. That's a problem. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, and we'll check in on Obi next week. We'll real quick. We'll wrap this up. We have 4 games in the coming week. Knicks will be at Detroit on Tuesday, and then a second night of a back-to-back will be home against the Bucks, and then another back-to-back Saturday and Sunday home against the Mavericks and the Cavaliers. So I mean, I think we gotta consider the Detroit Pistons game hopefully a win. I think that the Bucks would be a tough one. Mavericks I like at home. I think that Julius seems to really get up against the Dallas Mavericks. I think that's his hometown. So I like 2-2 here. I know you guys tend to be a little bit more optimistic in these guesses. So what do you think?
No, I like 2-2, and I think my optimism is I usually don't like predicting a losing week, and so I'm fine predicting a 2-2 week. And also a note on the Dallas game is Jalen Brunson, first game against his former team, and there were the whole stories that they could have signed him before last year for a lot cheaper than he got, and I think part of the reason he ended up leaving the team was because he felt a little disrespected by that. So we'll see how that plays out in that game. Although he's very much kind of stone faced, so I don't know that we'll see a lot of emotion, but might see some fireworks from him.
Yeah, you're good with 2-2.
I'm with you guys. I'll go with 3-1 just because just to be optimistic, change it up, change the vibe. Unless you guys want to do this as a pod. I mean the Bucks game, they're gonna lose that game. I'm just gonna tell you guys now. The Bucks are playing today, the 27th, and they are not playing again until the 30th when they play the Knicks. And the Knicks are playing, like Tom said, the second game of a back-to-back against the Bucks. It's not a good matchup. I mean, the Cavs were hot to start the year, then they got cold, and now they're hot again. So maybe they'll get cold again. They've been very up and down. I don't think the Cavaliers are as good as the record. So, like the Knicks beat the Jazz, I think, showing that the Jazz have really, come back to earth. Maybe they'll do that against the Cavaliers too.
All right,
Plus,
guys.
they have to get back to 500 because that's where we belong, and we're 2
The
games
Knicks
on
are a
them.
500 team through and through. All right, I think we can do like a quick lightning round of our America's favorite sub podcast. What else is on? Just real quick mention, Greg, what are you watching right now?
I just watched 1899 on Netflix by the makers of Dark. I won't say anything because Kenney hasn't seen it yet. And then we watched as a family the new Top Gun movie, which is very good.
Nice. We want to watch that. We're one of the few people in America who haven't watched that yet. So yeah, Rose and I want to check that out.
Yeah,
Kenny, what else is on?
Since Greg and I were together, our list is pretty much the same. So 1899 is supposed to be like I think it's kind of like creepy, a little paranormal-y. And so I tried like 5 times to put it on at my house, and every time I tried, Netflix restarted. And so I just eventually gave up and started watching Community. But I wasn't sure if that was part of like the paranormal creepy activity from the show. I asked Greg and he said no. So I don't know what was happening there. I'm eventually going to start that. Very excited to watch that. And like Greg said, we watched Top Gun as a family, which was I highly recommend it. It was an entertaining watch.
And Tom, what did you watch?
I've been sticking to my regimen of White Lotus season 2. Just caught up with that yesterday, and I know a new episode's coming out tonight as we're recording. So looking forward to watching that. I'm still in on this show. I know Greg and I we've been talking with Jake about it. Jake's pretty much out on it. I think he said he's now watching Park and Recreation and pretending that's White Lotus. But I'm still digging it. I'm still enjoying myself in Sicily. And then Rose and I are also watching New Girl. We're I think in season 4 or 5. They're kind of blending together, but that's been the comfort show to wind down at the end of the night, and
So
pleasant show.
after I watched 1899, like Kenny said, it's spooky. I watched an episode of New Girl to ease myself out. Goosebumps Walk Away was the episode.
Yeah, that's a classic.
Sayonara, Sammy.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
All right. Well, I think that's it for us. For everyone still listening, we appreciate you. Make sure you follow us, subscribe on YouTube. We are on YouTube. We are putting out content there. Check us out. Follow us on Instagram at Talkin Knicks, on Twitter at Talkin Knicks. We're putting out clips, and yeah, we've been more active. So definitely check out our stuff on all the channels. We appreciate you listening. Like, subscribe, review on the podcast platforms. Thank you. And as always, let's go Knicks.
Next tape.